Welcome to Something Funny, the podcast where two funny guys talk about their unpolished comedic observations, bits, and wacky premises. If you ever find yourself saying there's something funny about this, but I can't put my finger on it, this is the podcast for you. I'm Eric, and this is my lovely co-host Bill. How you doing today, Bill?
I feel lovely. I just got my hair done. It was a perm. Yeah.
So you're betting on the Jerry curl?
Yeah, it worked great for Lionel Richie, so...
Well, you know, I don't know. I figured the Jerry curl works if you have a shirt that has a collar. I don't think it works so well with a t-shirt. What are you wearing today, Bill?
I'm wearing a t-shirt and some shorts that you'd go running in. So yeah, the typical thing that I normally wear. It's not winter, so I'm not wearing the joggers.
Yeah, see, I'm not sure how well the Jerry curl works with exercise. I figure it does stay in place when you walk around, but I don't know if it stays in place when you run.
Anyways, I'm feeling great. Thanks. Hair's beautiful, flowing.
So, today's topic, we're taking on homelessness. We are jumping on that grenade that is so sensitive right now. To get into this, you know, I love a lot of kind of modern day comedians. I love Dave Chappelle, and he gets a lot of flack for this whole thing of punching down.
Yeah.
As if there are people and topics you can't get into because someone's got it a little bit harder than you. And, you know, I live in a big city. I see a lot of homeless around, particularly the little tent cities and the parks. And I think we all have, just as people who live near homeless people, there's a lot of like feelings we all have inside that maybe we don't get to talk about. And I want to get into this. I want to find a way to kind of thread the needle and walk the tightrope of still being likable and talking about things that we all think and feel.
I'm thinking rather than put us in a group like we are people that live near homeless people, let's call us the homed, okay?
Sure. As a homed human who lives close to unhomed humans, I had this observation recently. I was watching a documentary about human sacrifice and how pretty much every society, as primitive societies, they all have human sacrifice. It's part of the religion almost in the entire globe if you go far enough back. And with human sacrifice, this might seem like a tangent, but it was always done because we got to please the gods. But hypothetically, I believe I gotta kill a virgin for good corn this fall. Why do I gotta do it in the damn public square? Why does it gotta be a huge ceremony? Well, the reason apparently from the documentary, they think that part of the reason you gotta do it publicly with a big public spectacle is because you're watching in the crowd and the priest is up there, you know, disemboweling some 14-year-old virgin girl. The message to you is, you know, if they'll do that to this girl, what are they going to do to me if I steal or if I covet my neighbor's sheep? You know, we all believe in the corn god, but clearly this is a society where bad things happen and you better just keep your head down and do what you meant to do. And I think that's kind of the reason we allow the homeless to live in such squalor. It is possible that we could police them, we could give them proper services. Our parks don't need to look like trailer trash hellholes. We allow them to look that way, so people walking by, like Bill and I who have homes, we say to ourselves...
As a homed.
Yeah, as a homed human, we walk by and think, you know, I could end up like that. I better just tolerate my job that I don't like. I better put up with my boss. Things could get a lot worse, just like those people. I don't want to go pull up a tent next to them or hop in the sleeping bag next to them. Better keep my head down. I think the homeless, the way we let them live with no rules, is more about sending a message to the general public than it is like we don't believe they could take a stern talking to. Sorry, I talked a lot there. Do you want to jump in a bit, Bill?
Yeah, just going back to the killing of the public virgins. Killing of virgins, sacrificing virgins in the public. I think when they were doing it in the private, like too many virgins were being killed. So
well, yeah, because it could be done in a basement with a pillow. Why is it got to be done in the sunshine with the guy wearing like the monkey god mask and
You're right. It could be done with a pillow, but then there's no mess, right? And that's probably what's happening. They're like, oh, that's pretty clean, no mess. But you know what? If you're gonna have it as a public spectacle, let's make a show
Yeah.
of it, right? People want to see blood. So that's probably why the chopping of the heads. Could you imagine if the French Revolution just, instead of the guillotine, just had like a big giant pillow coming down on people's faces and they would be struggling for a bit and then just rolling them off? Like, who's going to remember that?
Wait. So back in those days, like in the French Revolution, they had to like the executioner wore the black mask, like the whole head thing, right? If he was the pillow guy, I bet he'd be a lot more like open about it. He'd be waving to everyone, "Hi, mom, I got the pillow you made me."
He's not wearing black. He's in a big teddy bear costume.
He's in pajamas.
Costume. Doo doo doo.
He's got a yawn in an exaggerated way. Oh, and the guy's like bolted down to a table.
He's got his own catchphrase. Time to go to sleep.
Nappy time, yeah. Back to getting into this as a bit. I like to think about getting ahead of the punch, right? Like, you're offering criticism here. And people are going to say, well, you shouldn't envy the homeless because what about the winter? This is Canada. They freeze their ass off half the year. And that's going to come. That's going to be in people's minds once you get into this, like, you're painting this vignette of a beautiful summer park, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking, like, yeah, okay.
I hate how often you paint vignettes, by the way. You should try to avoid painting them so often.
Well, I feel like there's a few lines in there of look. You can't see abs through a parka, Okay, they probably do enjoy a good group cuddle. They probably do it in all kinds of positions beyond the just 11 position. Probably a nice platonic 69 cuddle. They probably do have a bit of fun in the winter. But
the plutonic 69 where there's no sexual thing. They're just head to
Just a
crotch.
cuddle.
That's it.
they gotta.
That's how I want to cuddle with a person who doesn't shower.
But they could be showering. We could give them that. That's the whole thing, right? So, my point is, like, I like parks. I like to be outside. I would never hang out in the kind of parks that are near me because it's not 30% of the park with tents and order. It's chaos and needles everywhere. And we do have police officers. They could come down. They could keep it tidy. They could make them clean up or get out. So, to get into this, though, the comedic observation I have, I'll get to in a second, after some more long, drawn-out explanation. So the comedic observation I want to get into here is that it would actually be worse if the homeless didn't look like they were miserable. If you walked by a park and they look like normal, happy, healthy people in good shape, keeping an orderly couple tents beside each other, playing frisbee, society would actually find it far worse. Because then you don't have the scary boogeyman.
As long as when they're playing frisbee, it's not with like some old margarine lid that they're throwing in the air. It has to be an actual frisbee.
So, I do think that, to a degree, allowing the homeless to live like they do is kind of meant to send a message to the rest of us, right? And it could be done differently. So if I wanted to get into this as a comedic bit, I think I would phrase it like, hey, how's everyone going? I hear a lot of talk, people complaining about the homeless and the parks being horrible, and people tell me, it could be done so much better. We could give them services, we could give them toilets, we could give them showers, we could have security guards, and I want you to think about this. No, you don't want that. It would be far worse if they were looking like they're having a good time, laying there getting a nice suntan, sipping on lemonade. No, it's gotta be squalor, it's gotta be filth. Because if it's not, you lose that kind of... So yeah, hold for laughs. Phil, do you got anything you want to jump in with?
No. I was just letting you...
This is not polished.
No.
Eric, you seemed like you had enough rope to hang yourself. I was letting you get to it.
You know what? I always like to double knot my nooses, and I thought you did too. And I thought, hey, maybe he wants a quadruple noose knot.
So I think that talking about it it's really interesting because can you picture yourself walking through a park where it's super clean and they're like, they're in orderly tents and it's only 1/3 of the park and they're making eye contact with you, waving, hey, how's it going? Like, can you imagine? I can't imagine what it's like walking through a current park, the living hellholes that we have with a kid. Like, you got a 6 or 7-year-old kid, your son or whatever. I bet the kid's probably like, Daddy, why do we let those people live like that? But it's a great opportunity. You can be like, well, son, they didn't clean their room and they were bad at doing their homework. I think that's part of the reason we have these people. Like, that's why we let them live like they do, right? And if it was the opposite, what would you tell your kids?
Like, if it was a park full of models and like firemen with like chiseled abs, and you'd be like, let's go down to the park and check some bag ladies out, or honey, I'm headed over to the park. I'm gonna do some bird watching.
Oh, honey, you're just looking for those jaybirds. Those woodpeckers.
Yeah, you know it. Just if they were handsome and beautiful people that seemed civil enough, where you were like, you know what, I'm good to go over to the park at nighttime and have some s'mores with them. It'd be.
Oh, yeah, if they had a little campfire.
As a kid, I always thought homeless people would be living in alleys, right? On like a hot vent or next to like a hot pipe or something, keep warm. Right. But nowadays, they have all these tents and they're sleeping in parks, like having a camp out. And I just wondered, how did that happen? How did that happen? Were they like on the corner of the street and they're like, hungry, need food, anything helps. And then some guy or some woman's driving down the street and is like, hey, I just went camping and that really sucked. And I have my 8-person tent in the back and they say anything helps. Rather than this guy live in the alleyway, how about I give him my 8-person tent? And then that person's like, what am I going to do with this?
I can't sell this for drugs.
What am I going to do with this? And they're like, well, you're going to live in it. You're going to live in a park. And I'm like, in a park? Us? Me? And then they're like, all right, fine. And they set it up, and they're like, oh, that's actually way better than the alleyway. And then their friends all saw them living in the park and like, hey, let's do it. And so they all started living in the park, and it was just like a grand old time over there. Don't you remember the time when all the homeless signs on the cardboard signs like, hungry, need food, or a tent, anything helps, God bless.
Need tent ties and tent stakes, yeah. Any camping gear helps.
Or do you think someone was like, oh, had the foresight, oh yeah, I'm gonna be homeless soon, and I'll need camping materials.
Lost job, desperate for sporks. Yeah, I don't know. In my mind, as a kid, the things I pictured, they were nothing like what we see in the parks now. If I ever end up so badly off that I'm on the street and you're offering me help and I say, no, I'm good here, just give me more drugs, just lock me up. We don't do them a service by allowing them to live there when they need help and they can't help themselves. And yeah, it's so bizarre as a citizen, and we allow them to ruin our parks.
I always like that question. Lock me up. Lock me up when I do this, right? That you know I've gone too far when I've done this. That really should be a dating question on dating apps. Like
I agree. I've seen dating apps that have 25 questions before you can send a message, and they're like, if there was a zombie apocalypse, would you A, run, or B, fight? Tell us and we'll find Mr. Perfect for you. Such bullshit. If anything, you want to know this potential life partner of yours when they say, you know what, that guy who looks like me, who sounds like me, who says, nah, I don't want to go to a nice warm place to get medical care for free. When he says no thank you, that's not really me. You offer him a warm bed and he's sleeping under a bridge doing crack and he says no, don't take his word for it. Lock him up and ask him again in 6 months. Give him a bit of time to catch his breath and detox. So the way I see the humor in this is like the act outs, you know. The guy makes eye contact with you and, you know, hey, how's it going? Oh, you know, honestly, I don't know if it's going as well for me as it is for you. Do you got any room for another tent? And he's like, well, you know, me and my friend Perfectly Normal Jim, we talked, and yeah, we could probably scooch our tents a little closer together, but let me ask you this, okay? Look, it's not all sunshine and warm, beautiful days. Like, how do you feel about group co-ed showers? Oh, that's not a deal breaker. And are you okay with the nightly kumbaya as we pass around the guitar around the campfire?
You gotta sing. You gotta sing.
Well, I do know the G and the C chord. Yeah, sign me up, you know. And he's like, I gotta level with you. There are some downsides. You wouldn't believe how annoying those squirrels are. I mean, they might all seem like mischievous and cute, but man.
You give them a nut, and they just keep coming back for more nuts, and they'll just keep asking for nuts, and you're like, oh, fine, here's some more.
With those big, beautiful, adorable eyes.
Fine.
Now, you can teach them tricks. Seeing a squirrel do a backflip on command is pretty cool. I didn't get to see that in my former job as a software engineer.
You'd actually be surprised at how smart the squirrels are. You can actually get two squirrels, show them a nut, and get them to fight each other, and whoever wins the nut. I actually have my own YouTube channel, Squirrel Fighting.
Oh my god, you're Squirrel Dude 49? AKA the Squirrel Wrangler? But yeah, so if the homeless had their shit together and they were policed, it would be such a different social deterrent, right? I bet, to change the subject, I'd say, well, I bet it's a little different in the places in the world where it's warm all year round, like Miami or Hawaii, because it must be a lot of work for the police to come around and make sure they don't look like they're enjoying themselves too much, literally all year. I figure there's something really funny about the idea that they're actually making it look so bad for our benefit. I love the idea that the police are coming around like, hey, what the hell, man, you brushed your hair. You're supposed to look like a human monster, and here you are with straight teeth and visible abs and a nice smile, making eye contact with the children walking by.
Hey, bub. Hey, bub. How are we going to keep this the public in line if you're not looking scary enough? Come on. Do we need to pull some more teeth? What are you doing? Brushing? You're brushing? But did you hear in Miami that they were picking up all their homeless and then sailing them out, taking them on a boat. They took them out on a yacht. They sailed over there, placed them on an island, and just put them on the island. And I just think that's kind of hilarious. Where, like, that's how they deal with their homeless solution. And then I would just love for them to make a reality TV show of all these people that are either mentally ill or on drugs, and then they're on an island where it's like, I'm guessing it's probably a tropical paradise, kind of, without any any help, any toilets or anything like that. Not that they had toilets before, but they're like, oh, who are we supposed to beg? Hey, do you have any coconuts? Like, what are we begging for? What are we gonna?
Damn fucking monkey thinks he's better than me. Fuck you, seagull. I see you with your fish.
Yeah, it seemed. You could say that I'm punching down, but tell me who wouldn't want to watch that? Where it's like a bunch of people that have really no survival skills, but even though they live outside, but
they're already outdoor people.
But they don't live in the wilderness. They're like, it's like when you take like a zoo animal, right? And then you try to put them into the wild and they don't actually have their survival skills and then they end up starving to death. That's kind of what Miami's doing, but you know what? At least document it. So for research no, who am I kidding?
Let me put on some popcorn.
For entertainment, yes. Survivor Bum Edition.
Survivor Unhomed Edition this fall. Followed by Survivor Bum Edition Talk. There's always a follow-up talk show where they dissect, I think when Jerry said to John, "No, man, I poop in the hole, not like some people," he was really trying to make him feel bad for pooping in the tent. I agree. That Jerry's so passive-aggressive. You know the kind of shows I mean. Like, they're so asinine. Anyway, I feel like we're a bit off topic here.
A little bit, yes.
I do think so. I live downtown in Toronto, and I see people, like, my instinct when I see a homeless person or a street person or whatever, someone who's obviously not quite right, and I cross the street, and I'm not a small guy, but I see people who are just oblivious. I've seen, like, 5'0" Asian girls walking by on their phone within elbow room of a homeless guy who's stumbling the opposite direction. And I'm amazed they don't get attacked more, but just like the mentality. Why be within arm reach of a person like that?
Well, the funny thing is hobos are not respected. They're zero respect, and they're actually feared by all walks of life. Like whether you're in a rich neighborhood or a poor neighborhood, right? You don't make eye contact. You look away. You go to the other side of the street. You take the time to separate yourself. Just imagine if Bruce and Martha Wayne were, instead of walking down that alleyway and wearing their tuxedos, right? If they were homeless, right? Those guys would not shoot them at all. They would not be killed. They would have looked the other way and been fearful to make eye contact and fear that they would bring up a conversation and they would still be alive. But
well, as billionaires, they don't have a lot of foresight. You'd think when you're leaving the house, like, you bike around a downtown of a city, you take your shittiest bike. You think they'd have, like, a giant bum overcoat to throw on over their opera gear, just to, like, okay, this is my turtle shell I wear in public. Because, yeah, they wouldn't have been shot if they didn't look like they had money. You think they could have had, like, a nice slip-on kind of, I don't know, billionaire poncho?
Or the reversible tuxedo that on the outside it's a tuxedo, on the other side it's just shabby rags all put together.
When I reverse it, the shabbiness is actually great for my skin. Very soft. Well worn in and slick.
It's actually made of lavender.
Anyway, with the homeless, my point is, like, I assume you as a normal looking human who's well groomed have agreed to the social contract with these things. This guy who's walking around like a zombie, I don't know, like, there's no checking.
And the other thing about it is when they are asking for food, they're like hungry, anything helps, right?
Yeah.
And someone might have given them a tent. And like, okay, right? Why don't they give them books? Like, hey, this is a wilderness survival guide. You can actually see what plants are edible around here, where you don't actually have to beg for food. You can actually just forage for it. It's a lovely summer day, and there's a ton of berries out, right? And you could make yourself a nice stew when you're outside of your tent with your marshmallows and whatnot. And just you know what, you can, it goes with the old saying, you can teach a man to fish, or sorry, you can give a man a fish, or you can teach a man to fish, right? Or well, I guess I don't know the saying, but you can give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, or you can teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. That's what it is.
I do like that idea of it being a performance for us. And I love the idea of, like, the plainclothes cop, like, dressing them down, you know. I come around here again and I see you raking up garbage again. There's going to be trouble, mister. We're sending you back to under the fucking bridge. You know, I love the idea of him, like, calling up dispatch. You know, dispatch, we got a 437 down here. Yeah, the fucking homeless cleaned the park up again. Send a unit down, have them stop off at the hospital and get some of those used syringes. Not a goddamn used needle strewn anywhere. Can you believe this? I love the idea. Like, it's a performance, right? And it would actually be so much worse if it wasn't. It would be so weird to make conversation with them and actually hear, like, insightful things, you know?
If you went and talked to a homeless person and it was like they had clear advice, like it.
Yeah. That you reminded me of. Do you remember Home Improvement?
No, I was pitching Star Trek Next Generation, where it was like Picard would talk to the gardener.
Oh, okay, yeah,
like
yeah.
the gardener or whoever it was, and
You got a homeless guy, like, planting petunias, and you're standing there crouched by. My boss doesn't respect me, Jim. Well, have you ever thought of looking at it from his perspective? I don't know what his accent is. Sometimes people are very misunderstood, Jim. I don't know.
Look at me.
By the way,
just because
you got any crack?
just
The
because
advice ain't free, you know. I love the advice for crack. That's really funny.
Oh.
I also love the idea of, I remember things like you see old-timey movies and the homeless are there, like, polishing shoes, and we still have, like, squeegee people offering to clean your windows. I love the idea that if the homeless weren't so scary, you'd be like, they're sending the homeless away now sometimes, like, to other cities, right? I love the idea of a couple being like, oh, they can't do that. Where am I going to find good, reliable babysitters with excellent hygiene on short notice?
I just had the thought. So we're just talking about the homeless giving, like, good advice, possibly, right? And then
Yeah.
we're assuming that the homeless are going to be people on drugs or mental illness. But as AI progresses, right, and gets better and better, and it's taking away jobs like programming and, like, English class, I suppose, or like.
Or even lawyers are threatened.
Yeah, exactly, and it's removing a lot of jobs. I'm just I'm just picturing what types of jobs would be removed in the future, where these people would no longer be able to afford their house, and then have to live in the park with the rest of them, and then and then what kind of I guess you could get lawyer advice in the park.
Hey, Bill, I'm going down to the park to get my will done. You want to come?
No. I'll just use ChatGPT to do it.
Oh, come on. You got to get back. You just bring down, like, one of your wife's peach cobblers, and it's a good trade. It is pretty funny that, like, I love the idea of getting advice from them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what got me started on the crack is,
Everybody else at the s'mores party that we had at night, they were all doing it, and I was like, all right. I thought it was a marshmallow, melted down, and crisp, and I injected.
I never saw a marshmallow cooked over a spoon before.
And so I injected it into myself, and I was like, whoa, that's what sugar does in my veins? This is awesome.
Well, anyway, so I think we kind of covered the bulk of it.
Yes.
I think the observation is pretty strong that we're actually being cruel, letting the homeless live like this and not giving them rules or structure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the visuals, just imagining, like, I've seen people on holiday when I'm not on holiday. You know, you get your vacation and you go away and you come back and you still see, like, people enjoying themselves when you're leaving. They got 3 more days left and you think, oh, lucky.
Yes.
I think if we saw people in the park who didn't look like they were human monsters barely clinging to life with no dignity, it would actually be far worse for society. We do kind of need things to keep us on the straight and narrow, to keep us afraid, because, there's only so much room in the parks.
That's great, Eric. I think we can end on that.
Cheers.